Hi, welcome to You've Got Kids. I'm Áine, and this week Aoife isn't here, but I have invited a lovely guest who is also a proud mammy of two, and her name is Dúlra, and Dúlra has an adoption story to tell. And I know that there's many people out there who want to know the process of adoption and how the whole system works in Ireland and how it all began for you.
Thanks, Áine. That's a good introduction. Can I just say, first of all, I'm like the biggest fan of this show. I love it so much. I love sitting down, having a cup of coffee with Áine and Aoife.
Oh, deadly.
Yeah. So the pressure's on me now.
I'm your favourite, haven't I?
You're the one that's here, Áine.
So you have to say
so, yeah. So I'm an adoptive mom. I started my adoption journey, I suppose, when I got married. I wanted to have lots and lots and lots of children. I had a great vision of having loads of kids. And it's funny, like, even when I think about, when I was with my husband, at first I was thinking, God, this guy's lovely. He'd be a lovely dad. So it was always kind of on my mind, the whole family thing and being a mom and setting up a family. So I got married in 2011 and we just weren't getting pregnant. So that was really difficult, very, very hard time in our relationship and in our life. And it was very hard for everybody. It was very hard for my mom and my brothers and for his mom because there was no grandchildren. So then when my brother did have a son, thankfully, and then the pressure was off on that side a little bit. But I always felt, gosh, when is this going to happen? Is this ever going to happen? And there was a lot of adoption in my family. My first cousin is adopted. So to me, adoption was sort of an easy one to go to. It was kind of a very natural choice for us. So we started looking into adoption and trying to work out how it worked. And we had this amazing idea in our head that, there was so many children that would love to be adopted. And, it would be great to do that as a kind of a kindness or whatever, that, a calling to be an adoptive parent. And when we started looking into it, we were amazed at how the absolute opposite is true, that there are very few children for adoption, very few domestically, and also in intercultural adoption because of the Hague Convention, which was in 2013. So that changed I think it was 2010. I'm not sure about the date, but around then. And then just meant that a lot of countries were closed to the Hague Convention, and Ireland wasn't allowed to adopt from there anymore, from Russia, for example.
And can you tell us why that is? What came about there? Like, what happened there?
With the Hague Convention.
Yeah.
So I think the idea behind the Hague Convention, now I'm absolutely not an expert on this, but my understanding of it is that it was to do with child trafficking and child safety. That the Hague Convention was a way of safeguarding the children who were being adopted. That they were not being. It was a not-for-profit thing, that children were being adopted fairly and ethically and all of that. So it just meant that, and there was an awful lot of scrutiny went into the actual adoption process, and you had to be compatible. Your country had to be a compatible country for the sending country. So for example, it didn't work out for Russia. Russia no longer is a sending country through the Hague Convention. So that changed the whole landscape of adoption in Ireland, because our main countries at the time were, I think, Ethiopia and Russia. So that changed. They were closed now. So there was very few. There was a trickling, tiny amount of children being adopted from other countries.
So would you say the difficulty was on our part of the soil as opposed to the other countries?
The criticism of Ireland is that they did not make the agreements with the sending countries in time for when the Hague Convention was ratified in Ireland, which meant that it just closed the doors, and there wasn't any doors opened. So there wasn't any agreements had been made, that there was a lack of communication, I suppose. Now that is what I've read. It was a problem, but I think that happened across the board, that it closed down a lot of kind of possibilities for people to adopt.
Which is really sad, because just today I was reading an article about baby Alexander in
I
Russia.
saw that. Yeah.
And he's a little boy who was born with no eyes, which is a very rare genetic condition, and I think there's only 3 babies like him, 3 people ever in the world born with this condition. And I was just looking at the pictures and I was saying, I seen so many people had offered, I would love this child, which is just heartbreaking, because, and there's many babies like him.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to understand the fact that there are children out there who need a loving home.
Yes,
and there's loving homes willing to take these children.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, I completely understand the whole safety thing around children, that the children have to be protected.
Yeah.
And the people do have to be legitimately, looking for to give a child everything they need, because we do know there's corrupt and evil people everywhere. But do you think that we're over policing the adoption system here?
Well, I know it's something that caused an awful lot of frustration. Like when we started our training, even within when we started our training in Tusla, that was kind of what you just said there was exactly the way that everybody was talking. It was like, this is crazy, you're getting us to come in here and train, and you're asking us to put together all these plans of what kind of parents we're going to be, and there aren't any children, and why is it like this? Why has this happened to we are obviously going to give a child a good home, and there are children out there that need good homes, and we are waiting with our arms open, just praying for these children, and we're being blocked. It just seemed grossly unfair. So there was an awful lot of frustration and anger and upset around that, all right, at the time,
And red tape.
Yes, there is, there's a lot of red tape.
But regarding adoption, though, I just think, in this country we've legalised abortion, but there doesn't seem to be any option for parents who would choose adoption.
Yeah,
do you think so?
There's absolutely, and there's very little said about it. There's very little known about it, and the adoption stories tend to be sad stories. They tend to be historic stories of adoption, where children were given up for adoption, were placed for adoption, were taken for adoption, and just the pain and sorrow of the birth mothers who didn't want to give their children up for adoption, or that kind of forced separation, where that is not the same as it is now. It's the opposite of that now. So
can we talk about the type of adoption that you and your husband went through? You didn't do the international adoption, you went
we went for domestic. We decided we'd go for a domestic because actually we were thinking of fostering, and because the chances were so slim, we said, okay, we'll put our hats in the ring for adoption, and we'll give it a year. And if it doesn't happen, then we'll foster, and we'll go down the fostering route. Because I wanted to have children in my house. I wanted it to be a noisy house full of children. So if that was how it was going to happen, that was the plan. That was the plan. That was no problem. So we went down the domestic adoption route, not because we thought we had a very good chance, but just because it was the most natural way to go if you were thinking of fostering. Otherwise, you would have to go through an awful lot more red tape. It just saved us. So we were actually going through we had gone through our training, our adoption training, and then we had our assessment done. We had a social worker come out and meet us, and she was like our best friend by the end of it. She knew everything about us. Like, she knew our past relationships. She knew how we had, how we fought as a couple, how we resolved our arguments. She knew all our family history, like very personal, like every single possible thing, how we wanted to parent, how we saw ourselves as parents, what we would do if we had a child who was from a different culture, how we would celebrate their culture, and how would we share information with our child. So all of that was done through the training. And then we finally, after 2.5 years, we got our declaration, which meant, okay, now it's like getting a passport. You are now officially able to adopt. So that's when the waiting starts. So you're literally just waiting to be chosen to adopt. And you do your own profile. So it's a bit like a dating profile, I suppose. You just go, hi, I'm Dúlra, and this is Dara, and we love music, we love art. This is what our house looks like. This is, what we do, and these are our morals. These are our ethics. These are what we believe. This is everything about ourselves. Photographs of our families and everything, and then you kind of put your profile in, and then you wait.
So basically, it gives the adoptive parents the opportunity to profile you as well, like, and
the birth parents, yes, yeah.
I said adoptive.
Yeah.
Sorry, the birth parents. It gives the birth parents the opportunity to get to know you in a way, and then they decide this is who I want to place my child with.
Yeah, exactly. So say for instance, you were a birth mom and you were interested in adoption. You would go in to your social worker, there'd be a social worker assigned to you, and she would ask you, well, what kind of family do you want your child to be in? And you might say, well, look, my family's really musical. I really want my kid to be in a musical family. Or I love maths, and I just think if they're mathsy, that would be great. I mean, they can specify whatever. I want them to have a dog. I want them to have other children. I don't want them to have other children. I want them to be close to their cousins. I want them to live in a city. So whatever is important to the birth mom, she specifies that. And then nationwide, all of the profiles are looked at to try and match what her wants are. And then she's given a selection of the ones that come closest to what she wants. And then she can choose from that. And then from there, she can say, okay, well, I kind of like this couple, and I kind of like, it might be a single person, I like her or whatever. And then she can say, I'd like to meet them because I'm not 100% sure or I really like these guys, but I want to meet them first and find out what they're like before I agree. Or not. If they might say, no, just go with those, that's fine. It's whatever they want. Yeah.
And that sounds fairly reasonable. And can birth parents who are going through a domestic adoption, can they choose to have an open adoption?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes, yeah. So an open adoption can be anything from letterbox contact, where you write a letter with loads of photographs of your child for the birth mom or birth parents. Maybe you might decide on their birthday, I'll send in photographs in a letter. And you send it into TUSLA, and then the birth mom can pick it up if she wants to. It's there for her. Now that would be very little. So that can go all the way up to actual face-to-face contact. They might want to say, I want to meet my child every year. I want to see them every year. And that will be facilitated too. So
yeah, of course, because it's obviously hard for birth parents too. I do watch, do you remember Teen Mom?
No, I never thought.
Did you not? Oh, well,
I'm really bad when it comes to this.
No. But my favourite, aside from you, adoptive parents were Caitlin and Tyler, and they were 16, and basically they had a beautiful little girl called Carly, and what happened was they decided, because of their own upbringing, which was quite difficult.
Yeah.
There was a history of the parents going to prison and this, that and the other. But anyway, they placed the little girl for adoption. Yeah. And they had like an open adoption, and it was hard watching the process, you know. They later on went on to have another little girl. And it was lovely when they brought her to meet your sister, that kind of way. So it's kind of nice to hear that there is that option for people who are placing their children for adoption, that they can have that relationship, even if it's once a year. And I know it's difficult, obviously. But it is.
But you know what, Áine, when you think about it, like when I think about it from my kids' point of view, like it might sound a little bit scary for an adoptive parent, especially when you haven't been through the process, thinking that the birth parents might be involved in their lives, because there's always a fear. What if they want to take them back, or what if what if they like them more than they like me, or all these kind of insecurities come up for people when you start talking about the adoptive parent and the birth parents having a relationship, both having a relationship with the child. But we have come around very strongly to wanting as much contact as possible for our child, because that's the best for them. That's the best thing for the child, is to have a relationship with both, if possible, as much as possible, because it's their identity, and the fact is they have two moms and they have two dads, and there's no way around that. That's a fact. And I did not give birth to my children, and they weren't in my body, and I didn't go through all of that, and I didn't choose the parents for my children. That was somebody else's job. I'm very different to my job. My job is changing the nappies and, trying to pick out the schools and trying to calm down tantrums and reading stories. So it's both are absolutely dependent on each other. We needed each other. We needed each other. And I feel very close to my children's birth, particularly their birth moms, because I'm a woman, I suppose. But I do feel close to them in that they gave their child to me, and I am their child's mother. And there's a relationship there that even if we never speak again, that's very close. Because when I look at my daughter, I see her mom, like I see her birth mom in her.
Of course. And not only that, obviously, if that was me and I was in that situation, I was placing my child for adoption, you're going to pick the best person you believe who's going to raise your child, you know, to be the very best person they can be, to be a happy child.
Yes.
So for someone to look at you that way even is it's such a beautiful thing, because it, you know, this person's placing their trust in you and putting all their faith in you. And I suppose children are never short of, you know, they can never have enough people to love them.
Yes, exactly, Áine. That's it, exactly. There's no competition. There is loads of room for people to love my child, and I'm never going to stop anyone from trying to love my children. The more the merrier, you know. Yeah,
and that's probably why you're such a beautiful mom.
Oh God, I don't know. You should have seen me this morning at about 10 to 9.
In fairness, none of us get away with the rolling out of bed with makeup on.
It's so normal. Like, I mean, even listening to the shows you've done, you know, they're so applicable. Like, everything is just, you know, the sibling rivalry I have going on now at the moment in my house. Like, it's all very normal, even though the beginning of their story is quite different. You know, it's quite unusual. The normal day-to-day stuff is all very normal. You know, it's all very ordinary, run-of-the-mill mommy stuff, you know.
Yeah. And do you want to tell me a little bit about the bonding process?
Oh yeah, okay.
So like when Delilah first came to you and Dara,
yes,
how old was she? And
so she was 8 months. She was 8 months old when she was placed with us, and it was around Christmas time. And at this stage, we didn't know if we were going to get chosen. And we got a phone call on the 16th of December, saying, "Would you like to come into the office?" And we're like, "Oh, can you just tell us over the phone?" They're like, "No, we need you to come in." So we had to go into the office into Tusla, and they said, "Look, potentially we have a child has been chosen for you, or your birth mom has chosen you as potentially." So and we were like, "What does it mean? What do you have to do?" So we travelled to Waterford. That's where Delilah was born. We travelled down to Waterford, and we met with all the people. We met with the foster mum, we met with the birth mum, we met with all the social workers. There was a whole load of people we met with. It was done like it was a real team. It was a real team thing. Like, I just felt everybody was on the kind of the Delilah team. That's how it feels. And even now I'm in touch with everybody in that team, and I still feel they're the Delilah team. They'll always be the Delilah team.
Of course.
So it was at a point in Delilah's life where she was sort of automatically going to be attaching anyway, because that's the developmental stage she was at. So very textbook. When we brought her home, it was the 22nd of December. It was literally like just on at Christmas, and we came in the front door of our house, and we turned on the Christmas lights, and we closed the door. And that was it. We were in our cave for, I think, maybe 4 weeks, where we didn't even meet anybody else. So none of the grandparents met her, nobody else saw her. It was just us. And it was real bedding down of just making it really clear to her, look, this is mommy and this is daddy, and just really trying to force that bond a little bit. It sounds very kind of dramatic, and it is, but it's kind of necessarily dramatic to kind of really get it home to her. Look, I'm your mom, this is your dad. We're the people who give you your food. We're the people who look after you. And then after sort of that length of time, we started introducing other people, but they weren't allowed to give her anything. Like, they couldn't pass her anything. They couldn't lift her. They couldn't hold her. So she still was very clear, these two are the two I depend on. And that's attachment. Like, that's how you build attachment, is just constantly being the person that she relies on. Like, constantly. And eventually then the nanas were allowed to hold her, or, you know, put her on their knee. And that was a big day for us as well. So it kind of, and then obviously the circle gets sort of very gradually gets bigger and bigger until you have her now. And she's like the most sociable child you've ever met in your life. You know, she's really friendly, and yeah.
I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how it was for Dara going through the adoption process. As you were talking about bonding and stuff like that, you kind of go into your little cocoon. And
that's right, yeah. So just the same with if you give birth, you get maternity leave. I got adoptive leave, so it was the same length of time as maternity leave, minus the 2 weeks that you have before you give birth. So it's actually very generous. It's great. So I had this big long adoptive leave ahead of me, and Dara, just like any father, was given the 2 weeks paternity leave as well. So luckily now, because of the timing of it, if you think about it, we brought Delilah back on the 22nd of December, so we were right into the Christmas holidays. So he got his Christmas holidays, plus then he got the extra 2 weeks. So it meant that for that bedding down period I was talking about, that I kind of think of it as being in a cave, but it's a very pleasant Christmassy cave. Dara was there for it, for all of it. So she attached very strongly to both of us. And some days she wanted to be with him more than she wanted to be with me, you know. So that it's funny, like they do kind of play around with attachment. They kind of go, well, actually, I think you're the one I want to depend on. They actually, maybe it might be you. So you know, that was fun as well.
Or some parents call that manipulation. What can I get out of this one?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually it's funny, he's the same, because some days, like when Dara comes back in from work, he just jumps with excitement. He can't wait to see him. And if Dara picks him up and I try to take him, no way is he going to come out into my arms once Dara's there. Dara is his absolute favourite person right now. So I think they go through these really strong attachment phases with different parent, and it's great, I think, as well, to see a boy doing it. Like, I mean, it's gorgeous to see a girl doing it with her daddy. It's lovely. But there's something really special about seeing the boy.
Horseplay. That horseplay, isn't it? Like,
just, well, he's only a baby now. He's only just turned 1. So there's not much horseplay yet, but I'm sure there's going to be.
Yeah. He's only a baby.
Yeah.
That's so cute, isn't it? And how old is Delilah now?
She's 3.5.
3.5. So there's a lovely age gap there as well.
Yeah.
But I think that horseplay in general, it never goes away with boys.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, because I see my husband and the 2 boys.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? It's really nice.
But it's like mammies are for nurturing and daddies are for play. Like,
yeah.
Do you know, if they get hurt, they run to me.
Yeah.
But like, the minute he comes in from work, it's,
this is going to be great crack.
Wrestle.
Yeah.
Yeah, wrestle, mate. And even the girls as well. Like.
Yeah.
But that's obviously a lovely bonding thing that all fathers and sons have.
And it was so lovely for me to see, like, to have gone from a point when I saw Dara, like the amount of times, he's such a generous person, and the amount of times when his friends of his got pregnant, and there was one night in particular that really stands out for me when we were out with all of his friends, and his friend had his wife was pregnant for a second time, and all Dara's friends were all patting this guy on his back, and I was sitting back looking at Dara, and my heart was breaking for him, because I was thinking, it's his turn for him to be patted on the back to his friends, and I just really felt my heart broke for him. Like, I just thought I really wanted it for him, and now just to see him with his 2 kids, he's just like, he is the father that I thought he was going to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
There is nothing more attractive about your husband than when you see how much he loves your children.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
You just like look at them and mesmerise.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I see my hubby with my kids and how he interacts with them, you know, that's where my eyes dazzle.
All over again. Your eyes dazzle. Yeah, that's exactly it, Áine.
Isn't it? No, it is. It's just like, you know, maybe it's just generally the fact when he comes in, I get to sit down and have a cup of tea. Who knows? But I'll go with the dazzling daddy. But because obviously throughout this conversation, I wasn't talking much about, you know, the father's needs as well, obviously, you know, and it's a hard process for men too, and sometimes there's a lot of focus put on women when there's, you know, fertility issues or difficulty there, and sometimes the men kind of get forgotten, isn't it? A little
absolutely.
bit, you know, they feel it too.
And if they're not as pushed about having children as the women, like they might be, but even if they're not, the fact that their wife is so sad is a huge loss for them. That's very difficult for them, and I know that was very difficult for Dara. The fact that I was sad was very hard on him.
Of course. And one more question I want to ask you is, you know, when you adopted Delilah, what type of cards did you appreciate? Is it
that's a great question. Because there's not very many happy adoption cards. And actually it's funny because you get a new baby boy or a new baby girl, or some of them are kind of not really appropriate for adoption, like welcome to the world, and you kind of, well, she's already been in the world, right, months before, you know, I was her mummy. So just to be honest with you, our house was just covered in cards when we adopted Delilah. People I had never met sent me cards. Like, people were so moved in such a huge circle around us by our story that every card was very precious. I've kept every single one of them. But, you know, the things, one of my friends got an adoption card made, and I thought that was really special. That was lovely. And I think as well, people are kind of awkward around it. Sometimes they're like, you know, what can I say and what can I not say? You know, it's not a new baby. Do I do such? And the thing is, I think the thing about adoption is to be so open and honest about it. It is what it is. Like, it is what it is. And there's no point in pretending you know, that I gave birth to her, or, you know, or trying to fluff it. You know, sometimes moms would have a conversation and they'd be like, it'd be maybe about breastfeeding or something, and they'd be like, oh, you know, and then suddenly the penny would drop at them. Oh, you didn't do that. Like, and they get kind of embarrassed about it, like as if they've done something wrong. Whereas I'm quite sort of open about, you know,
yeah, because you're still a mom. You're a mom.
Yeah.
Your child came to you in
a different way.
Yeah.
She came kind of an interesting route. Yeah.
yeah. But she came to you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
so,
she
you know,
did. Yeah.
I do you know, and I love the way you make it. Everything was all about Delilah, because,
yeah,
you know, it would be very hard, I would imagine, for your own parents coming in and not being able to hold their grandchild.
I know.
Like, what was the effects on them?
Oh, it was so hard for them. Now, we had some really good social workers on Team Delilah, and the social worker, one of them said, look, ring your mothers and tell your mothers that they're in charge of getting other people to understand the situation, and explain to them no one's going to be allowed to hold her, nobody's going to be allowed to see her for a length of time. But rather than them getting upset about it, give them the job of telling other people, and give them all the phone numbers of all your friends and get them to ring everybody. So it was actually, they really owned it then.
Right.
Because they were in charge of that. They were the gatekeepers. So it meant that they really did understand it, because they were telling everybody else about it. Yeah. It was very clever. Now I have to say, it was very clever, and it was very nice for the grandparents, because they got to ring everybody and tell them, which I think is nice for a grandparent to say. You'll never believe what's just after happening, because it was absolutely magical. Like, it was amazing. It was an absolute miracle. It was.
Did you believe maybe like, oh, we're never going to get picked, or, you know, what were the feelings kind of, you know, when you went for the adoption process initially?
Well, I suppose what happened was, when we had gone through the adoption process and we had gotten our declaration, then we started on the fostering process, thinking, okay, well, we'll just get this started. So, and I was we were maybe our third or fourth interview with the fostering social worker, and she was talking, and she was kind of saying, you know, okay, well, do you think you'd be able to take a child this summer? And I suddenly just got this, and I surprised myself. I surprised everybody in the room, but no one more than myself, where I just got this, just everything stop. No, we can't go forward with this. We need to wait with the adoption, because if we started the fostering now, then the adoption stops. And it was the first time where someone said, oh, I had a feeling. I never had a feeling ever. I just kind of hoped that everything would work out. But I never had a strong feeling. That was the moment. It was when the door was almost closing on adoption that I felt, no, this can't happen. There's something there. And it was the only time I had a feeling. And within 3 months we were picked. Yeah.
Within 3 months of being given the passport, say?
Within 6 months of getting the passport, and within 3 months of that, sitting in my couch going, stop.
Really?
Yeah.
And what was how long was the process before getting the passport? Was that like a year?
2.5 years.
It's a long process, isn't it?
From the time, the first thing is you go to an information meeting. So that's the point where most people go in, and there's all these people, and suddenly they're being told, okay, there are, 7 domestic adoptions on average a year. There was only maybe a handful as well abroad at that stage, because that's when the Hague Convention had really just started. So it was the real low point in adoption at the time. So that was 2.5 years from that moment, sitting in the chair, to getting our declaration in the post.
And after, when you adopted Delilah, isn't there a period where the birth mom can change her mind?
So that's a placement. So she was placed with us then, but it took another, I think it took April, so that was December. It took another year and 4 months, so 16 months before the adoption order was made. So that's any time up until that point. She wasn't an O'Brien, like she didn't have the same surname as us. She still had her birth surname. So, and she wasn't officially adopted by us. But I didn't even think about that, Áine, to be honest with you. And I know, again, the nannies were both like, oh, phew, thank God. Like when the day came, they were, whereas, I was like, but she was ours since the moment we got her, And I never felt any threat or, but I think on a practical level, the nanas were like, okay, now she's, and they say to you, she is yours now as though through birth. You're as responsible for her now as if she was born to you.
Of course, yeah. Well, that makes sense as well. I can understand how your mother's felt because I think I'd be that panicky person goes and knock at the door, you know. And I think that's just a natural feeling, you know. I think as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think in some sense of the world, before we get here, God knows who we're going to be with.
Yeah,
and
it's so true, isn't it? It's also mysterious.
It's so mysterious because I mean, there you were, just about to go through the fostering system, which is a brilliant thing to do for any children.
And I will do it, hopefully. Yeah, I will hopefully do that.
Yeah, myself and my husband now, we want to do it. We always said we'd do it. We said foster or adoption, just because there's so many children out there in need of a loving home.
Yes, in fostering, definitely.
Definitely. And it is a hard process, I suppose, for people to go through, because I mean, fostering is different in the sense that they aren't yours.
Yes, and your job is actually, repatriation is always the end goal it's always the desired end goal for fostering. So that's different. It's different. So you're kind of, it's very giving and very selfless fostering. Like even the foster mum who had Delilah before we adopted her, because all adopted children, before they get adopted, they go into fostering while the red tape is being cleared. And there's a certain length of time that has to go by so that the birth mother can change her mind or can visit, or, so there is a big gap there.
So, and how long is that gap? Is it about 6 months roughly?
Yeah, it's supposed to be in around 6 months. Yeah.
So, see, that's difficult as well, isn't it? For the wonderful foster mums out there
who take them from babies from day one, and watch this little baby develop, and then meet strangers who are going to be the mother and father of the child you've been looking after.
Yeah, because
there were actually 3 mothers. Like there are 3 mothers, because the foster mother takes that role on too, and it's really important.
Of course, and then especially if there's siblings as well.
Yes,
I don't mean to be putting like a negative spin on fostering, but it is a difficult thing. I think it's just wonderful. I have friends and family who've gone through the fostering system, and I think it's just an amazing thing to do, and it's something that's always been on my heart. But that thing, I've fallen in love with the children.
I know.
Just like,
I know.
How do you
your
do
children falling in love with the children, that's a problem too, because your kids will be like, they will miss a baby or a child that has to, that goes home. But I think that's, if you have to fall in love, because if you don't fall in love with them, then you're not doing it right. Do you know what I mean? Your heart has to be broken, or
otherwise you shouldn't be a foster mum.
You kind of have to, and it's just like, okay, here, bring it on.
Yeah, because one thing I always think is that fostering and adoption has to be about the child.
Yes,
it can't be about, I just want to be a mum.
Yes,
and he just wants to be a dad. It has to be about the child. Can I give this child the love and care that they need? Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually how we came round to that very much so. That was our thinking after we had Delilah. Obviously I wanted to be a mum so much. It was so deep in me that and everyone else was getting pregnant several times a day. Everyone I touched got pregnant. Like, it was just it was really difficult for me. And it was selfish. It was selfish looking back. I wanted a baby, and that was it. But then after Delilah, we officially adopted her, and then I was kind of thinking, gosh, it'd be nice for her to have a sibling. And my life was lovely with Delilah. We had a great life. I took a career break I'm a teacher, and I took a career break. So I was not going to be going back to school, teaching again until she was in school herself. So I had a lovely little existence. We should put her on the back of my bicycle, we go for lovely cycles along with daughter. And and then I started thinking, she could be nice for her to have a sibling. And I remember talking to one of actually the Delilah team, the social worker, and she was like, I think if you could really give another baby a really lovely home, and a sister, that's what you'd be giving that child. And I was kind of thinking, so we said, okay, we'll put our names in the hat a second time. Now we were thinking the chance of this are very slim, but we went through the process much shorter the second time. We just took I think a year to get all our paperwork. Actually getting our paperwork was the hardest bit, and then doing a couple more interviews and stuff with our social worker, because obviously our family had changed, so a lot of the answers that we'd given the last time were no longer relevant. And then made up our profile, and obviously now there was a big sister in the profile when we put that one in. And within 2 weeks, we were picked. So I really feel it was just meant to be. It was just meant to be. He was supposed to be with us as well.
Do you mean within 2 weeks of you putting in the new profile?
Yes. Yeah.
No way.
That quickly.
So the original profile doesn't stay? Or do you just add to it? Or?
It wasn't relevant anymore because the original profile, there was no big sister in it. It was just me and Dara. Whereas actually that wasn't what our family was anymore. So the second profile had to be completely different. I mean, obviously the house was the same. We hadn't moved or anything like that. We were a bit older, which we actually thought, oh, that's really going to go against us because kind of 40 seems to be the cut-off now. Dara, thankfully, is a bit younger than me, so he hadn't reached the 40 yet. But I had. So I kind of felt, well, there's no way they're going to pick me now. I'm way too old. But I think it was just one of those things that I think those two were meant to be together. I think, that's how I feel. It just feels like that was why it happened so quickly.
Jeannie, that's such a lovely story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
What are they like? What was she like when you told her, you're going to be a big sister?
So just like the sibling rivalry thing that you were doing, she didn't have any lead-in time. So because we didn't have any lead-in time, we had 2 weeks where it was literally like, okay, we are going down to Waterford now and you're going to meet your little brother. And that's what happened. And it was the same office. It just happened to be Waterford as well, which is kind of very strange. But anyway, we were back in the same office again. And she had 2 weeks. We stayed down in Waterford. And at the end of the 2 weeks, we brought home her little brother. So you can imagine the trauma that must have been for her. Suddenly she was the middle of everybody's world. And now suddenly she has a little brother who's now going through attachment parenting, which means we have to give him an awful lot of attention as well.
Yeah, of course.
So she's gone from, going, he's looking out my window. Tell him to stop looking at my window. To kind of, I love his little hands. I love him so much. So we have the two extremes. Just in every kind of normal little brother relationship, I suppose,
Of course. Oh, I know that too well. Mine literally kill each other day and night. And, some days you could just pull your hair out, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
So talking about the age of adoption in Ireland, generally, is that, you were saying 40?
Yes, yeah.
Is generally the age that they kind of say, is it that they say, after 40 you're not really applicable, or
no,
is it?
It's that after 40, when a birth mom is looking at your profile and they see you're 40, they're going to think you're very old. So it's not that you that they won't let you. It's just they advise, because of the fact that it's the birth mom that chooses, that 40, the over 40 doesn't seem that attractive. It seems old to a birth mom. That's the reason why. Yeah, that's actually very sad as well, because an awful lot of couples nowadays tend to start their families in their 30s and then run into difficulties. And I just think adoption there should be an easier process to adoption in Ireland, because I think there's so many parents out there who are just desperate to give a child a loving home. Yes, I know.
And they have everything a child needs.
Yeah.
But just the system is just so broken.
Yes, and so frustrating. Yeah,
it's sad, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think maybe we just need, I think the fostering, if you have a calling to be a mother and to give care, fostering is definitely something that should be looked at. And obviously it's not for everybody, it's for very few in fact, but it is an option that needs to be kind of at least looked at, because that might be where your calling is.
Yeah, I know, definitely. Like I've always said, I don't know when I will do it, but I definitely will do it. It could be when my children are a little bit older, or who knows, I've had it on my heart before. I've rang up about it, and they were telling me, your youngest has to be over the age of 2. Now that's over the age of 3 now, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's something that's on my heart that I do want to do. And then there's the red tape of fostering as well. They have to have their own room. Yeah. So if you do have other children. Yeah. And I don't think there's any harm with kids sharing a room.
No,
I love sharing a room.
I know. Well, I suppose with babies, you wouldn't have that if you were fostering a baby. That might have been placed for adoption later on.
Yeah, and then there's the long-term fostering as well. There's children who go into the foster system and they just stay there for whatever reason, which is sad in one sense. Yeah. But at the same time, at least they have a consistent loving home.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know what? Sometimes when they're becoming sort of older, when they're getting closer to 18, there is a lot of adoptions happen then of long-term fostering. So that is where quite a few of the numbers are made up for a domestic adoption. If you look at them, there quite a few of them are coming from long-term fostering.
So there's only roughly seven domestic adoptions a year.
From infant domestic adoptions. So that's just my kind of situation where a birth mom places their child for adoption and chooses the birth parents. That situation.
Right.
There's on average 7 a year. Yeah.
And if somebody already has children, say for instance myself.
Yes.
I have 4 children.
Yeah.
Let's say tomorrow I said, right, I'm going to go down the domestic adoption route. Yeah. Am I going to be looked at because I have 4 children or no?
Oh yeah, of course.
Do you
mean by a birth mom or by Tusla?
Both. Tusla might say
everybody has a right to apply. Everybody has a right to apply. And the only time I've ever heard of anybody being told, "Oh, you can't do this," is through health. If your health is bad, yeah. So I think they would look at you, and then there could be a birth mom out there who's like from a really big family and specifies, "I want my child to have siblings."
Really? Yeah.
So that's possible that you see, there's no way of saying what someone's going to want or not. It's so personal to that birth mother. So
true, but I was just like kind of wondering, is there statistics to say, you're more likely to have somebody place their child in your care if you have siblings, right. or if you don't have siblings.
I think definitely there is an age. The age thing is definitely, you can say, okay, statistically, the younger you are, the better your chance. Also, you're going to be you have a longer life within the system as well. So you might not get the first year or the second year, but you're still young. So it doesn't, you're still in with a chance. Whereas if you're going in quite late and after a year it doesn't happen after 2 years, it's getting less and less likely
that it will happen.
Yeah, because you're getting older. So,
yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? And what about international adoption? Do you know anything about that?
I know very little about it. I know a bit about it. I probably know more than your average person does, but I haven't done it, so I haven't that experience.
Is that the same?
No, it's the birth parents don't generally choose you. It will be done by an agency. So it would be to do with the needs of the child, and if what you are able to provide matches the needs of the child. That's generally how you're matched. But you would be matched not by the parents generally, but by the agencies. So that would be, say, for Vietnam and Thailand and Philippines. That's how it's done as far as I know. Now, I know in America, if you were to adopt from Florida, it's very expensive. I think it costs about €40,000 to adopt from Florida. But you can adopt a newborn baby, and it would be the birth mother or birth parents that would have chosen you. So that's different. So it's different for each country, I guess.
Each country has their own system, and then obviously if you're going down the international route, it's obviously more expensive.
Yes, it's free. It's free. Domestic adoption is free.
Domestic adoption is free in Ireland. Yeah. That's an amazing thing to know, because like I know plenty of people who have had trouble conceiving.
Yes,
and I know an awful lot of people who just haven't gone down that route because they just think it's so expensive, and they don't have the financial ability to raise so much money straight away to go and do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, obviously,
so your finances are looked at to make sure that you have money, but they don't take it off you. So they do look at your financial statements and stuff, make sure that you're not in financial difficulty and that you're comfortable enough that you can afford a child. But they don't charge anything. Yeah.
And there's so many children out there that are just in need of a loving home. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your Facebook page?
Oh yeah, so I have a Facebook page called Domestic Adoptive Parents Ireland, DAPI, because I just found that there wasn't very many domestic adoptive parents. So I'm trying to set up a little network, and it's growing very, very slowly. I have to say it's growing slowly, but it's there, and I put up little stories and little a piece of information if I ever get them around domestic adoption and stuff about Barnarda's and the courses that they run, and our own history from start to finish of how we went through the adoptive process, just to help people starting off, because I think it would have been very helpful for us to have had that kind of information at the start.
And basically it's you offering your support to other women and
absolutely.
Men out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely lovely, because as I said, there's loads of people out there who really want to do it.
Yeah.
They just don't know the process, and
Yeah.
they don't know. And an awful lot of people think it's a negative, sad and stressful process. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at you and you haven't stopped smiling since you come in. And you're obviously because you're talking about your lovely kids.
Yeah.
But you have a really happy story. It's a happy adoption story.
Yeah, it is a very happy adoption story. And but the thing is only there is a sadness at the beginning of it, and there is loss, and there is trauma, and there are all these complications and difficulties in adoption. But that's kind of life. For everybody has they're complicated. Everybody has their story, and that just happens to be ours, you know.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, even though that's the beginning of the process, and there is the sadness and the loss, and, you know, because as you said, there are 3 mums.
Yes, yeah,
and it's a loss for
everyone
in the sense, because, you know, at the end of the day, they're doing it because they know it's what's best for them.
Yeah.
And then you have the wonderful foster mum who has given all her love and her time, and maybe her children and her husband have as well. But at the end of the day, as difficult as it is, it's such a positive thing in the sense that you're creating this secure home. You're giving love to the children, in your case, the 2 children.
Yeah.
And you're giving, you know, you're creating a new family, like, and it's amazing, like, really, isn't it? Like, when you think about it, they're going to have such bright futures because of you and Dara.
Yeah, and the foster mum and the birth mother all together, all the steps, absolutely, yeah. Well, hopefully, I suppose I'll be the one that'll be letting her go out the door to college or whatever. we all kind of have to let her go a little bit at some point in our lives.
Of course. And as you said as well, there is open adoption, and there are different ways of going about adoption.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it seems to me that the foster mother, the birth mother, and the adoptive mother, and the fathers too, obviously, they come in there too somewhere. Of course, sorry to the dads for not, you know, sparing your feelings, talking about mammy. But this is mammy show. Anyway, it seems to me that all 3 in that situation, or 6, or how many, and even the social workers involved, all have the best interests of the child.
Yes, that is the absolute centre, is the child at the absolute heart of it. Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah.
And
it's a beautiful thing to have been a part of, to be a part of, I have to say.
Is there anything else you want to say to, let's say, have you any advice that you might want to give?
I don't have any advice for anybody else, because I don't know what anyone else is going through. And if somebody had given me advice in the past, I would want to punch them in the face. So the advice I would give to myself, if I was to go back to the time before I adopted Delilah, would be this is going to work out. Just enjoy what you have right now, because life can change like that, and it's different forevermore afterwards. So enjoy what you have in that moment, and just trust, because I read a saying with something along, I'm probably going to get this really wrong now, but I'll do my best. Something like, sometimes what feels like God's rejection is only God's redirection. Do you know what I mean? So you think, oh, why am I not getting pregnant? Why am I not being a mom? And then suddenly you realise, oh, that's why. That makes sense to me now.
And that's why everybody loves you, Dúlra. You're just so positive and angelic, and there's just something so lovely about you.
Oh, no,
I can, you know, can you adopt me?
Yes.
Can I go home and just gain that positive attitude from you? And because you have a lovely way about you, don't you?
Thanks.
But that's great advice that you're giving to your old self, even though you won't give it to anybody. But, you know, people are going to listen to that and take it on board because you gave it to yourself. Okay. They're not going to want to punch you in the face.
Good, don't punch me in the face.
I don't think anybody would want to punch you in the face, in fairness.
And you know what? I hope that goes on my grave slab when I die. Nobody wanted to punch you in the face.
Thanks very much for talking to us today. It was absolutely inspiring, and I'm really going to think more about what you've taught me today, and I hope all the other listeners listening in, especially those who are having trouble conceiving, they'll take something positive away from this conversation.
Yeah. So Áine, thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.